Shine. Once came a sound from inside, made a light hit the ground. Everyone got the sound in their heartbeat. Every man, every woman, every child.
And welcome Facebook, welcome YouTube, welcome Twitch. Get ready to go live with Children of the Sun, WS6 AM 970. And, okay, welcome everyone. Hello, welcome to the program. I hope you are, as the song said, ready to dance the limits of the imagination and maybe hear the promptings of your heart a little more clearly, because that's what we're all about here on Children of the Sun. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. We're here every Friday for about 2 hours, 12:30 to 2:30. And if you're hearing the sound of my voice, that means that it is a Friday. And in fact, today is Friday, August 6, 2021, about 12:30 p.m. AST, Atlantic Standard Time, because we are broadcasting from the beautiful island of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I want to say good afternoon. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the weekend. To all my listeners in Christiansted, Frederickstead, Kings Hill, why not? Buck Island, why not? St. Thomas, St. John, Water Island, our sister island in the USVI, St. Kitts, St. Nevis, Antigua, Aruba, Down Island, Up Island, BVI, Joss Van Dyke, Tortola, and really welcome to the world, because in addition to being able to catch us on AM 970, WSTX, the soul of the Caribbean, you can also catch us over Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch TV, station's own website, WSTXradio.com. Just click the Listen Live icon. Apple TuneIn Radio, and really just about any internet streaming service you might be using. For those of you who are longtime listeners of the program, well, first of all, hi, my name is Ray Bratcher. I'll be your host for the next couple of hours. And as you know, we like to focus on leading edge thinkers that are contributing positive energy, either locally, nationally, or internationally here on Children of the Sun. And my guest today is certainly no exception to that, and in fact is a prime example of that, exemplary in that regard. My guest today is Jac O'Keeffe. She is a spiritual teacher. Let me just bring her on. I'm going to bring her on the live stream and share the screen with her. Hi, Jac.
Hi, Ray. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, island to island. It's early morning here.
Let's see.
Good to be on your show.
Oh, good. Welcome. Let's see. So I want to thank Jac especially for coming on. Right now it's 12:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard, as I said. But where she is, it is 6:30 in the morning. So we're very grateful to her for coming on at such an early hour at her time to be on the program and talk to us. It's also quiet time where she is right now. So for the first part of the broadcast, she might be speaking a little quietly. So if you're listening at home, you might want to turn your speakers up a little loud. Later on, we'll be back to normal. Although we're going to be talking about spiritual integrity and spiritual teachers and how they behave in the real world. So I guess telling the people there that you're a spiritual teacher, so the ordinary rules for ordinary people don't apply to you, I guess you couldn't do that, right?
The beauty of being human is that we share it all. So every rule applies to everybody, no matter their status, no matter.
Yes, and that's very good. So I know you want to talk about the ASI, the Association for Spiritual Integrity, and I'm definitely on board with that because I think it's very important. And I'm gonna, because of the, to just kind of like maybe use up a little of time here, because you have to be careful about how loud you talk. And so that I want to give a little quick background biographical sketch of you so that people know why they should care what Jac O'Keeffe thinks about spiritual integrity. And I'll talk a little bit about how the ASI got started, and then I'll turn it over to you. So and so I'm just going to give the really brief, and if later on, if you want to comment, clarify, or correct, feel free. We can also come back to it later. But as I say, I know you really want to talk about ASI, so we're going to do that for the for as long as we need to, as long as you want to, and then maybe towards the end of the program we can come back to some of the more biographical stories from your past. Though I know that that's like probably to you by now. You've talked about it so many times, and it seems like the ancient history of a person that no longer exists. So I understand completely if you don't want to get into it at all. But just to kind of catch up my listeners who may be unfamiliar with who you are, brief. I'll just do a really quick and dirty biographical sketch. So you were raised in Northern Ireland, Catholic, of course. Then you went to investigate theology, to study courses because you wanted to know what's it all for, and you finished your years of religious and theological training and social work training, basically a committed and confirmed atheist that took care of whatever faith you had left by that time. And then the next thing you know, you had a spontaneous opening of your third eye, and you were seeing all kinds of things that did not fit with your picture of reality at the time. And there are a number of things that happen. One of the things that happened is you developed the ability after your third eye opened to see auras. So then you could give you could work with people in terms of consultations from a really great place, because you could see what their energy field was doing while they were talking to you. And so you spent some time doing that. And you also could see people who had passed on but had not left this plane, so you actually spent some time as a Ghostbuster. But eventually, I think it was you were looking for the next thing, and somebody invited you to a yoga training in India. So you were like, well, okay, I'll go. And you shut down your business. You went to India, and the yoga, a day or two of yoga, and you said, no, this is not what I want. But you wound up staying in India in a place that seemed to be very conducive and supportive of like long-term hours and hours of meditation. And even when you were not like in formal meditation, just walking around the marketplace, you were constantly like questioning your own perception and asking yourself about what am I seeing, who is seeing this, what am I conscious of, where is this from? And you eventually had spontaneously went into a non-dual awakening. And the next thing you know, you're giving satsangs all over the world, and you're on Rick Archer's Buddha at the Gas Pump, which I guess is probably where you met him at. And but in keeping with your own ideas about the Association for Spiritual Integrity, which is that it's for spiritual teachers, but you want them to realize it's not one and done. You don't have an awakening experience and now you're perfect and you don't need to grow anymore. So you followed your own advice. You continued to grow and went to a place that's even prior to non-duality. And I think lately you've gone even further. So we could talk about that after we get through with towards the end of the program, after we've said everything we need to say about ASI, Association for Spiritual Integrity. And then you began giving satsangs all over the world, went on Buddha at the Gas Pump with Rick Archer, got invited to give talks and workshops even at the SAN, the Science and Non-Duality Conference. And apparently around 2017, there was some scandals, ashramic scandals in the ashram, gurus abusing their gurus and spiritual teachers abusing their disciples, students, clients, in a host of ways, sexually, financially, kind of the authoritarian control thing was going on. And this apparently was like it seemed like there were a number of revelations then. And you used your talk at SAN that year to kind of like talk about how this is a problem and it needs to be addressed. And then just coincidentally enough, a number of other speakers at that conference also talked about the same thing. And you guys, none of you knew the other guys were going to be talking about this. And so afterwards, you got together and like said, well, this is obviously something we're all concerned about, so let's talk about what we're going to do. And what wound up happening is that you, Jac O'Keeffe, and Rick Archer of Buddha at the Gas Pump fame, which is like an interview show for spiritually awakening people, and Craig Holliday, who is a psychotherapist in Colorado, who I guess would be fair to say he went through his own Kundalini awakening, and it wasn't always pleasant, and sometimes it was very difficult. And so he now practices. He's open, I think, to regular clients who want us to, see a psychotherapist, but he kind of has a specialized niche of providing psychotherapeutic support to other people who are going through their own Kundalini awakening and having a difficult time. And he had also he had, because of his psychotherapy training before he became a spiritual teacher, he had the whole ethics guidelines of the training they give you to become a counselor to bring to the table. So the three of you founded the Association for Spiritual Integrity to address these scandals, these why teachers and gurus from the West and the East get into trouble, and what can we do to support them and to keep them from getting into trouble. Last thing, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I should probably mention here that I'm also a member of the ASI. But I'll try not to be too fawning. And so let's so what I gave about your biographical sketch, if it, is it basically correct? And then maybe you can go from that to telling us more about the founding of the ASI, what the organization sees as the problem and the cause of the problem that you want to address, and what your goals and purposes are, and how the organization goes about trying to reach those goals and fulfill those purposes. So Jac O'Keeffe, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ray. That was a very in-depth and spot-on biography. Thank you. Can I just pepper in some other things that might help reinforce where I'm looking from now? When I was 19, I attended psychotherapy to kind of sort out myself. Well, to be brutally honest, I was hitchhiking from university back to my parents for a weekend, and I got sexually assaulted, and that rocketed me into psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. And what a gift, because I stayed in psychotherapy. I stayed there because the third eye incident that you nailed there in your description, I was 30 when that happened. So all during those years, I found psychotherapy fantastic. I'm like, oh my God, I see things in one way because of the way I was reared. I can see things another way if I see that they are beliefs and that this is conditioning. And so I started to unravel the thing that binds us all, which is the limitations in our own thinking, the beliefs that we've taken on to be true without even recognizing that they are beliefs. And so there was many years there of learning how my mind worked, and how do I pull back from it, and can I dissolve it, and what's the authentic preconditioned state anyway. And I was interested in that. Third eye opened at 30. Of course, then for an atheist to see everything and you're not going nuts. I mean, I was a farmer's daughter, so I'm kind of pretty grounded, and I'm like, okay, this is nuts. I'm looking at like dead people, I'm looking at energy fields, I'm looking at chakra systems. Pretty quickly I was evolved into being able to diagnose what was going on in somebody's body physically. It went into seeing past lives. I didn't think there was any such things as past lives at all. And so all this information was coming in that I had to do something with, really. Organize my own belief system around it, organize my own perspective of what's useful for people and what's not. So I was kind of learning on the ground.
Right.
One segue then that happened during that time was there was a psychiatrist who lived in my part of Ireland who heard about me, and he came. I didn't know who he was, what his work was or anything. He just came as a client to check me out. And something happened for him, and he phoned the next day and he said, everything you said is right. And I need to hear more from you. I need, something is happening even in my body. We need to talk. And so what happened was I ended up taking a lot of his clients, his patients, that he really did not know what to do. So sometimes he would have a gut feeling, I think their psychiatric illness has something to do with spirituality. Could it be that spiritual awakening makes you kind of go a bit mad? Or could it trigger psychosis? What could happen there? And so we shared a file of people who most of his diagnoses were correct. Most of the people that he sent me, yes, it was a spiritual awakening, but they ended up in the psychiatric system because they didn't have therapy like I had as a background. Or they just had no network around them, and their environment said, you need to see a psychiatrist. And so it was all suppressed with medication. And the awakening stops, and we're forced to participate in the same life that's trying to fall apart, that's trying to break, because your life is requiring something else of you. It wants you to respond differently. And spiritual awakening can be like that. It pulls the rug from under you. If it's abrupt, it pulls the rug from under you. And having the courage and the willingness to say yes to it and to go towards it and see, well, what are my support systems now? My friends, I'm pulling away from them. I don't have the same interests anymore. And so it kind of can be destructive and constructive at the same time. And it happens like that for a lot of people. I do believe that we're in a changing time right now. I do see a lot of evidence that no longer are we being yanked out. I went to India. Actually, the first thing I did was I lived for 3 months in a tent in the south of Spain because I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I need to take time out and stop everything. And from there, off I went then to India, and my life changed completely. A lot of us don't have that opportunity to step out. Like as a woman, I remember making a decision. I have to decide, either go full on towards discovering what is this pull towards spirit inside my heart. What is this journey about? And if I'm a mom, if I become a parent, I somehow know that will be compromised. And I really did feel it's an either or for me. I do believe that has changed. That's 20 years ago now. And I do see now that awakening is possible because the supports are now becoming more mainstream. Everybody's probably heard what mindfulness is. I know your listeners are much further along, but there is an openness and a vocabulary around spirituality that wasn't there 20 years ago. So now I do see women with children, career women, engaging in an inward spiritual journey and managing to maintain the same sort of life. And, you know, they might have to leave their marriage. They might change how they parent. They might have to go away for a little bit just to get their heads sorted. But they actually discover, actually, if I just get up a half an hour earlier, that's the going away that I want. It's not leaving my country and leaving my family and my marriage as I did. It's sitting on a meditation cushion or sitting up on my bed and going within and discovering, oh, the world inside, maybe that's a bit more authentic than how I present on the outside. How do I marry these two? And so I do think contemporary spirituality is underpinned by that. It's like your inner has got to be reflected in your outer.
Right. I think like sometimes dramatic change is called for. Sometimes dramatic change is running away from the change that really needs to happen, and it's helpful to discern the difference for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think stay at home and try to make it work is the first port of call.
Of course, and integrating, the Western model is going to be like integrating into our ordinary life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is. And with the internet, information is possible, support is possible. So the supports have come in. We can do it and stay in a regular Western life. We can, you know. So segueing back, there certainly were cases of psychosis where somebody was going into an altered state, but actually giving people the tools to manage an altered state, those shifts in perception. How do we not get scared of them? How do we not dissociate? Get out of fight, flight, flee. Get out of that way of operating in our nervous system and breathe through what's happening in order to, all right, how do I make sense of this in my world? And scooting right through to the ASI, we are a group of spiritual leaders, influencers like yourself, in a position of helping others or advocating going within. And do we walk our talk? How are we around our outside world fitting in with our external participation in life? It's as valid as for patients of mine from 20 years ago who were having psychotic breakdowns and misdiagnosed, right through to you and I, Ray, to like, yes, we know about, an inner sanctuary. We know what our true nature is. We know that the different layers of perception are more authentic than the stories that our mind creates about what the world is. Now, how do we marry the two? Are we going to get like cocky and go, oh, I know the truth, and that's an illusion. That's not true at all, because that's just your mind, and you're stuck in your story, and you're all angry, and that's your stuff because you need therapy, and I'm fine. And this kind of superiority complex, unless that's healed, unless we learn about humility, unless we're willing to see that we're always a student, we're going to be a jerk. We're going to abuse power. It's inevitable. Right. There will be a denial of our humanness. And living in the West, this Western lifestyle of integrate as you go, make sense of this in your normal life before you go out of balance, choosing your inner world before the outer world. There's the first red flag. You've got to merge them as you go so that you're growing in an authentic way and not really cultivating an inner at the cost of not being able to manage in the outside world. And this is how spirituality is changing. Because years ago, what would you do? You'd go to an ashram, you'd go to a monastery, you'd go, I don't know, live in the trees. There's all kinds of ways that people had spiritual callings that they felt there is no place for me in my world. I have to leave. and disconnect from all kinds of people. And, you know, there's an island off the south of Ireland, a small island. It's a rock. It's literally a rock. And up at the top, there are these beehive-shaped hermitages, huts that monks lived in for years and years and years. And, you know, they would fish, they would catch rainwater, and they would spend their time in prayer and going within. A beautiful monastic order. Could they manage in the world? No, they couldn't. They couldn't. Can we do it now? The supports are there. We've got to learn how. The trouble is, when we don't do this work and integrate as we go and take responsibility for our humanness, what happens is that the two worlds, it feels like two unless we bring them together. The inner value system, the inner way of seeing, of operating from, I don't know, truth, some traditions call it truth. That's a different viewpoint. It's a different viewpoint. And it's not a superior one. It's an alternative one.
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't know how to integrate that into our humanness, what happens is that we go forth and spread the good news, which is kind of pretty dominant in the Christian Bible. Go forth and spread the good news. And so way too early, we're out there thinking, oh my God, this really helped me. I want to tell you, I want to teach you, I want to spread the word. And not watching, is this appropriate? What makes you think, just because it helped you, what makes you feel that everybody else is ready for this also at the same time? And I did plenty of that too in my own time, of like, but don't you see, like there's freedom inside. It's just how you're looking at something and discovering, hold on, every path is different. Just because this was okay for me, keep it for myself and get better at this, at managing the inside sanctuary with how it shows up in the world. What's the material there that I want to run from? And I just want to tell people the destination that I found, the viewpoint that I found. That's the go forth and spread the good news. It's like, stop, stay at home, internalize it. Don't become a preacher. Don't become a teacher. It's not the next thing to do once a deep awakening has happened. You know, it was of its time, but it led to such a mess. Such a mess. You know, we ended up with, you know, certainly in the Irish culture, the teacher and the priest have a status among the rest of the community, and nobody can challenge them. You know, they're deemed as leaders in the community, and they're not to be challenged. And if anybody, you know, does dare challenge, it's like, well, I'm a man of the cloth. I'm doing the work of God, or, you know, I've been and had an education more than the rest of you, so I know better. And so we have this power differential. This is how we function very often, is we give each other power. If I go to my doctor, I'm giving some power. I'm paying for advice. So they have a little bit more power than I do. Does that mean that I lose my voice? Does that mean that I turn a blind eye to an absence of integrity? Does that mean I, you know, deny my own dignity and I receive bad practice? And so we're only beginning to learn globally about how to maintain our own power when we're in a situation of where we feel another person has more power over us. Even somebody that we admire, anybody, a friend, if we admire them, they have a little bit more power than we do. Now, do we still have courage? Can we still use our own monitor of what is moral and ethical? What's the right use of power? And will we call out that person with more power than us, that we perceive as more power than us? Will we call them out if they're abusing their power? And this is the wave, the systemic change that's happening globally. I hope it's global. I think it is. If you look at it in the US, where the Black Lives Matter movement has turned our faces towards, we've got to address racism in this country. And so looking at the power differential there, where white supremacy is an abuse of power over the African American community. So there are layers of this everywhere. And really, I suppose, one of the slower ones to catch on with this authentic equality, authentic transparency and honesty that's coming into the broader culture. Spirituality is one of the slower ones to catch on.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so many spiritual leaders, my own friends, my own colleagues, don't get it at all, because it's way more comfortable to be, I don't want to be accountable. Like, it's too much in the world to take care of ethics, Jack, to be concerned with accountability, to want feedback from students. No, I know that what I say is truth. Ray, there's so many people who've said that to me.
Well, so like you bring up a number of issues there. I mean, with the power differential and the idea that we're approaching a mass awakening. So more and more people are becoming awakened. So everybody cannot go join an ashram.
Yes.
You've also got the power. You know, like it used to be, if you pursued a spiritual path, there weren't very many of you, and you would find you would go to the Hermitage, the rock off the coast of Ireland, and then the institution would take care of you, and then that became the institution would protect you from anybody complaining about your behavior. But now, as everyone as more and more people are waking up, which is going to, which is probably happening because the human race may very well go extinct if enough people don't wake up.
Yes.
So I guess, it's like we want to integrate that into ordinary living, and that means not having this power differential. And we've seen that the institutions don't necessarily prevent abuse. We see institutions sometimes protecting the teachers and the priests from keeping them, safe against people bringing genuine concerns.
That's right.
Yeah. So if we are moving to a place where we're bringing awakened spirituality into ordinary life, then what that does is it brings you to the next question, which is we can no longer afford to say, I think, politics is unspiritual. Getting involved in Black Lives Matters is like that. That's too much. I don't know what that. It's too much getting involved in the world. We want to be. We don't want to be involved with worldly things. We want to be on our castle off the coast of Ireland, protected by the church, doing and saying whatever we want.
Yes.
And so we're getting to, people are, I know a lot of people that I know, they want to be spiritual. They don't want to make any kind of comments about any kind of political thing or social movement, or you said they don't want to be uncomfortable. And but I think we're being, if everyone's going to be awakened, not only do we not have the option of all of us going into an ashram, we also don't have the option of all of us staying out of politics because it's not spiritual.
Yes.
How do we walk? How does the ASI want people to walk down? Because I know you ASI, you had seminar with Victoria Santos about the spiritual power of being an anti-racist.
Yes.
And there was another one you did not too long ago.
Yeah. About racial equality also, there was.
Yes.
And we look at climate change.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's like, so we can't just, as a spiritual community, we can't just ignore this. So.
And then there's that other issue of traditionally the spiritual leaders were supposed to know everything about everything.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I remember like when I got my first marriage in Ireland, and I think maybe it's still the law, I'm not sure, that you have to do a marriage weekend. They talk to you about mortgages and relationships and communications. And in my time, way back, my first marriage was 1992, it was given by a priest. The course on marriage was given by a priest. You know, and even then it was like, he's never been married. He's supposed to never had sex. I mean, where is this course going to go? And I just signed up in a lift, actually. You know, myself, my husband is like, okay, I actually, after an hour, it's like, this is ridiculous. So, you know, there is this expectation that because maybe somebody has, you know, discovered the divine within, that they have this expertise in all these walks of life.
Right.
You know, we're expected to know about trauma and marriages and relationships and codependency. And so because, you know, we're not clear really about where is the line. And we're learning it in the Association for Spiritual Integrity. Where is the line around what we have to have expertise in? And where do we get clear within ourselves around, I can't help you here, this is out of my domain. Now, we certainly do feel we all have a responsibility for our planet. We all have a responsibility to deal with racial injustice. So that like there is a common ground of equality and taking care of our planet. Surely those things are applicable to us all. Another area we want to explore is critical thinking, so that we learn how to assess information, because so much of the spiritual community has dived down into conspiracy theory. And there has been, like, between the you know, what happened in the last 4 or 5 years with the president we had before now, and what's happened with the pandemic, there has been you know, people have been searching, and instead of searching within, they've been going to conspiracy theories, because people are saying that Google is the master of all information. And so it's that we're living in an increasingly divided world where people are not able to discern anymore, well, what's the truth and what's conspiracy? And so rather than me stepping back and saying, well, that's conspiracy and that's the truth, why don't we explore critical thinking, so that everybody has this ability to discern and to recognize how to fact check, how to find out what is authentic, and to know the hooks of getting involved in a cult, in a conspiracy, and to be able to step back and have the courage to know and to call something out when it needs to be called out. So we're just learning around how aware. Yeah, sure, there's certain things we have to be aware of. We have to, like, just come out of the ashram, take our head out of the sand, and participate in life in a much more real way. You know, okay, so another spiritual teacher recently, I was saying, hey, come to this Victoria Santos. She's a wonderful woman. Come to her event on the ASI. And this friend of mine who's a spiritual teacher said, Jac, I've had African American lovers. I'm not racist. I'm like, well, so have I, but for sure I'm part of the problem. If I'm not part of the solution, I'm part of the problem. Sure, of course I'm racist. Of course I am. It's like, I have to start off with the assumption that I am, in order to be open to seeing the evidence for that. And of course, there's plenty evidence of where I unconsciously, because it's in our culture. So,
yeah, you can be not a racist without, and not be anti-racist.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
There we go. Yeah, great point, Ray. Exactly, great point. You know, and so imagining that we don't need to learn, that we've nothing else to encourage us to grow, that once you abide in that divine essence inside, once you live from there, everything else sorts itself out. That's not true. Live in an ashram if you want to do that, but that's not good enough anymore, I think, for our own community. We're obliged to upskill, you know.
Well, Well, so is when you, I know you also did a webinar with the founders of Con Spirituality, the
Mm,
podcast of people talking about
mm,
critical thinking and
mm.
spiritual leaders and teachers and influencers falling under the spell of the QAnon cult. And recently, that seems to be that's been the most obvious example of spiritual teachers. um, they wouldn't, and it's difficult. They wouldn't call it abuse. They're not abusing. You see a lot of like yoga teachers and Reiki people
Mhm,
who began to promote Q
mhm.
to
Yes,
their students, and their students
yes,
became involved in Q. And a lot of their students were yoga teachers in their own right. So then their students became involved, and so it like swept through this part of the metaphysical community, the spiritual community. And they're not like necessarily, they're not abusing people sexually or financially, but it's using your prestige, the power differential you talked about, to sort of
yes,
like push people in a
yes.
direction that undermines their critical thinking. So,
That's right.
um,
That's right.
are you gonna are we looking to um, make spiritual leaders more aware of what constitutes critical thinking, so their discernment
Mhm,
gets better?
mhm. That's absolutely essential. It's essential. I think that's that how we look at things. If you're looking from the divine within, as in a post spiritual awakening, your view on the world changes. But issues that are of the world, that's really not much good to you a lot of the time.
Right, right.
There's too big a gap, because I know we're all one. I know we're all one. And yet my conditioning makes me judge because of social class, makes me see this person as more important than that. I prefer one gender over another, or I don't understand this, so I think it's rubbish. You see, this is the absence of critical thinking and overriding that inner perspective to where it actually really has no wisdom. Like the spiritual teachings, they have to be enriched with a whole human being, a WHOLE, with wholeness, where our humanness comes in. Because one thing I often say when I'm doing my spiritual teaching is, this Jac woman is like a glove on top of what I really am. It's like an external manifestation. I've got to take care of this woman and how her human physical brain works, so that she's watching her own conditioning. Because the truth within isn't going to clean out all my unconscious conditioning and habits and cultural prejudices, and it's not going to just do a clean sweep, everything is sorted now. And we've kind of sold it that way, certainly in scriptures. It's like, well, the truth will set you free. Like, yes, and then you have to do the laundry of who you are as a person. And maybe it was marketing in its own primitive way back, that said it's kind of a one and done, the phrase you used earlier. It's not a one and done. You've got to do the ongoing growth, the ongoing um, uh, evolution of your humanness in order to honor and to be continually bowing down to the truth within you. But the relationship between the hand and the glove, that's critical. That's critical, because the glove will have its own agenda unless the glove is cleaned out, and that the hand can move the glove in an informed way. There's another angle, Ray, if I can jump ahead to something. There's another thing that we've noticed very recently in the Association for Spiritual Integrity. You mentioned earlier about, that the organization would protect the abusing priest, teacher, leader, minister. And they do, yeah. It's like, oh, there's a problem here. Okay, let's put you in another parish. Let's put you in another region, and off it starts again. This was not a clue how to actually deal with the issue, but made it worse. What we've discovered is that when there is a teacher who is abusing, and abuse ranges from like financial manipulation, emotional abuse, subtle abuse of power, overriding somebody's trauma and ignoring it and not giving them the tools to manage their own trauma, right through to sexual abuse. And it all happens. It's all out there in varying degrees. So I'm thinking of an organization recently where the teacher was sexually abusing the female students, of course, the young and attractive female students. He's very charismatic. And the leadership of the organization, and this is typical, the leadership of the organization are in a double bind. The leadership of the organization, okay, they have to say, I have to deal with this complaint, and this is the person, we're on the board, and this is the person that we're supporting with our organization, and they're creating huge harm. Why the organizations, we have found, can't take it on board is because of a double bind. Number one is that them personally as individuals are students of the teacher. So not only do they have responsibility of care for their community, but also up for review is the choice that they made about their own spiritual evolution.
Right, okay, yeah.
And that double bind creates a logjam. And this is what we have found. Organizations that are not able to, set up a grievance procedure, that they just, what they do is they filter out whoever isn't drinking the Kool-Aid in the board. They filter out those. The broken students are lost. And so the ones that will maintain the dysfunctional bones of the organization will continue, because the board are not able to, I screwed up, I bought in hook, line and center, and there is the additional karma that I have exposed all these people to them. We don't have any supports to address that. I've never read an article to address that issue. We've only learned of it recently. It's like, that's why they can't do anything about it. That's why it's just too much for the board members to process.
Well, and also, it's interesting that we're doing this now, because our conversation is topical now because of the recent news revelations about a Guru Jagat who in California, who just recently tragically passed away at a very young age, and people are coming forward right away with all kinds of accusations of abuse. And I until the hullabaloo of the past few days, I had never heard of her. And so, but I'm seeing headlines like, girl, girl boss yoga teacher to the Hollywood stars with a multi-million-dollar empire passed away, and almost immediately people were coming forward making accusations. I have no idea if they're true or not, but what I did notice, because it repeated a pattern, as soon as they came forward, the immediate response was to slam them down for disrespecting the dead. Even if it's true, you should keep your mouth shut for a few days and let the people mourn their dead. And I never saw anything like that. And like prominent spiritual teachers, instead of dealing with it, like slamming them down, telling them to shut. And that's what usually happens when someone comes forward with any kind of accusation. The institution or the people around them tell them to shut your mouth and don't bring this up.
Yes.
Which makes it difficult to address the issues.
That's right. And what I wonder what it would look like. What would a support system look like that exposed what the problems are for the organization? Because that's the issue. Okay, they can play that card. Well, she's dead, so back off. You didn't have, it was obviously clearly unsubstantiated, because if she was alive and you said that, it would have worked itself out. And, people will use everything to deny. We don't have any platforms, any way yet, and we're looking at them. to like, well, if there was a grievance procedure, what is it that people are so disempowered that when they're abused as adults, we can understand it for children, and we have like Childline, and children have rights, and there's ways now for children to have, it's not enough, but to have some avenue to get support when they are abused. Adults, we have nothing. We have nothing in the spiritual sector, nothing. So it's like, no, let's just bat it away, because there's nothing to support the board to say, how are you going to deal with this? Maybe it's true. Are you prepared to see that this is true? Did you know about it really? Were you turning a blind eye? Were you uncomfortable with something? Come on, let's help everybody together. That requires huge courage, Ray, doesn't it? It's huge courage to like, maybe I've been endorsing an abuser, and what is it in me that has contributed to the pain then that's happened as a result of me supporting and endorsing this person.
But the ASI also offers like peer-to-peer support, because you want having a procedure for bringing out problems and addressing them is one thing. Preventing the problems from happening in the first place would obviously be ideal. And so you have your ASI offers peer-to-peer support for spiritual teachers, because as you say, you may have an inner realization of the existence, consciousness, bliss. Who you really are and what the world really is. But if anything, after awakening, the shadow side gets emphasized. It gets like spirit wants to clean you out. So anything in you that is not whole is going to get pulled out, and you're going to be forced to look at it. And if your idea of spirituality is, well, if this is coming up, it must be, I'm spiritually awakened and perfect, so whatever I am dealing with is just a part of the spiritual progress. But it's like deal with it by addressing your shadow, deal with it by dealing with it, and use and so the is it ASI? Talk a little bit about how ASI provides spiritual teachers with some peer-to-peer support, so that actually, which is something that you do in your workshops with people. You don't pull any punches. You call people on their bullshit. So, and I think that peer-to-peer support can be maybe not as intensely as you do it, but we could call each other on our bullshit and prevent the problems from arising in the first place.
That's right. But we found that the people who are attracted to the ASI are already quite aware that there is laundry to do on our own humanness. The people who are behaving badly think that we're completely lost and we're destroying teachings, and we're bringing in regulations, and you see, so we're being pushed away as everything that's uncomfortable gets pushed away by teachers who behave badly. So here we are again. So the ones who are in peer support, it's like we have to change the culture. We have to change the thinking around what is involved in being a spiritual teacher. We have to, tell students, ask your teacher, do you have a grievance procedure? Have you signed up to a code of ethics? If I have a problem somewhere, where do I go? How do I give you feedback? If we could empower students to ask that of their teachers, so that abuse of power is addressed at the outset, the possibility of abuse of power is set up at the outset. So the peer-to-peer support, we don't know what it's going to look like for teachers, really. So what we're doing at the moment is we've set up 3 pilot groups that'll run for 8 months, and that to give each, we're at the moment actually designing 3 different models of peer support, so that we can find out what works best as guidelines for effective peer support for people who are awake? What does it look like? Sure, you're going to have the basics of confidentiality and be supportive. Like what's the method we use to call out each other so that a teacher who's been teaching for 20 years has the courage to, all right, I'm going to join this now. And do I have the courage to be called out? Because they might be drinking their own Kool-Aid. You see? Right. So we have to explore and see, what does peer support for teachers look like? We were looking at the psychotherapy, psychology, we were looking at those types of peer support, academic peer support, and it's like, none of these is quite going to give us the right platform, because our work is a little bit different, because our process is a little bit different. And those of us who've done an awful lot of psychotherapy on our own stuff would approach it very differently to those who haven't done it at all. How do we have peer support that marries people who have very little psychological awareness of their personality, and those who have a huge amount and are constantly working on their conditioned mind? Like, how do we have meeting ground? So this year we're on an exploratory adventure to see what would peer support look like, But I think it's necessary to put these things in place. There's so many nuances. There's so much work we need to do. And here we are, a few of us working voluntary. We all have full-time jobs, and we're working voluntary to let's bring up this issue. Let's talk about this issue. Let's explore this issue. We're getting somewhere, because we can certainly see more of these topics being discussed. We can see a greater divide, which is awful. I didn't anticipate this. I naively thought people will want this. No, there are many teachers who are, I will have nothing to do with that, Jac. Nothing to do with that at all. I don't want anybody telling me what's right and what's wrong in how I teach. Okay. And these are kind of well-known, public, highly regarded teachers. But it's working for them. As a career, it's working for them. They've got a big community. So of course they're not going to want to be accountable. Of course they're not. Why upset their apple cart? What do we do about that? And so all we can do is, I think at the moment, unless we get more ideas and learn more, is create a counterculture of awareness, of where we demand better practices, so that students demand it of us, and that we encourage, ourselves and those of us who are interested in being better people, having more integrity, walking our talk, being more honest, being authentically humble. This is an essential chapter in spiritual awakening. It's an essential chapter in every book. We're not there yet.
So I think maybe this might be a good place to take a short break. And when we come back on the other side, I want to ask you to begin with about maybe the model is spiritual friend instead of spiritual teacher. Like, I will help you to grow as best as I can as your friend, but don't put me on a pedestal and try to project all, make me perfect and project all your stuff on me and make me responsible for everything. And then that allows me to take advantage of you because of the implied power difference. In other words, spiritual, as we approach each other as spiritual friend versus spiritual teacher. And maybe think about that, and like how this whole radical non-duality thing is talking about how none of them are teachers because there's nobody here, and so they look like teachers, they talk like teachers, they act like teachers, they charge fees for their non-teaching. So I'm not quite sure. Yeah. I'm just wondering what you think about that, and like. So that's like the one extreme, I'm not doing anything, versus the other extreme of a spiritual friend instead of spiritual teacher, versus the, a spiritual teacher, like potential for abuse, radical non-duality, non-teaching is like doesn't really solve. There's also a potential for abuse while
Oh yeah.
making
Oh
you
yeah.
wholly and completely absolved of any responsibility, because you're not teaching anybody anything, so you have no responsibility. Maybe like the whole spiritual friend model is the way to go. But we've been chatting for about an hour, so I'm going to give us a 10-15 minute break, and then we'll come back on the other side of the break, and we'll have about another 30 minutes or so to continue. Is that good?
Oh, it's great. Thank you.
Uh,
I'm just looking for a bio break is fine. So whatever, I'll be back shortly
okay.
and where
All
you
right.
want to take it. Thanks,
All right.
Ray.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
I'm going to take us. Let's see. I'm going to mute us both. Well, no, I'm going to mute you. I have to play the exit music. Okay. Okay, guys, we're gonna take a short break, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. You're listening to Children of the Sun, WSTX AM 970. It is August 6th, 2021.